Hi everybody and welcome back to Apple Cottage. This is Sandy and I am Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming. So before I forget, make sure you like, subscribe, and share with the world. Now this is a video on making lilac jelly. That's right, jelly from lilacs. Now most of my lilacs are finished already, but I have two different sections that they don't bloom till much later. And in fact, when they very first start to open up, they're very white. And then you can see the purple, the light purple on the stems. But what I need is, if I do a regular batch, I need 2 cups of just the flowers. No leaves, no stems. And if I have enough, if I have 4 cups, I'll double the batch. And so we're going to just go step by step on how you make lilac jelly. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a section and I have to take all of the flowers off and then just discard the stems and the leaves. Now I'm starting with a glass bowl. You need some kind of bowl that is very heat resistant because we are literally going to pour boiling water on top of our lilacs. So I'm just going to go through the process of just taking all those flowers off, and we're going to fill this bowl. So I'm just gently pulling the flowers off. I don't want any green part. Now if there's some of the flowers aren't open yet, that's okay. But if they're really spent, if they're really dried up, I don't want to put that in there. But as you can see, they just gently pull off. And as you pull them off, that lovely smell of lilacs is just everywhere. And it's literally filling my room with that wonderful smell. Now, a lot of times I like to take my lilacs and I trim them and I bring them inside, and I'll have great big vases full of lilacs. And it's just wonderful. That smell and that aroma that just permeates your whole house. And you can just gently touch them as you walk by, and the smell just is phenomenal. Now it is an old-fashioned smell, and I suppose some people that's just not for them, but I love that smell. It reminds me of when I was a child, and I just think it's just fabulous. But I have a great big huge bowl, but as you see, even though this was just packed with flowers, it doesn't make very much. And so that's why you have to pick a lot. And then when you get your 2 cups or your 4 cups, depending on if you're doubling the recipe, and I'll put the recipe below, you can just put the rest of them in a vase and enjoy them that way. And these ones, they bloom a lot later than my other ones. They're a lot lighter in color, and the scent is somewhat different. But it doesn't matter which type of lilacs that you use. If it's early spring lilacs or if it's late lilacs, they're pink, they're yellow, they're white, they're purple, they're dark purple. Any of them will work. And as you can see, it doesn't take a lot of time because this was a really large bundle of flowers, and we're finished. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to go through my whole bowl that's over here and just see how many cups I get. As you can see, our flowers are filling up the bowl. And as I do it, I try to look for any leaves. Because you pick them outside and they're such a cluster flower, sometimes you might find little spiders or bugs or dirt or just stuff on the flowers. But because we're going to pour boiling water on them and we're going to steep them overnight, anything that might be on there is going to just perish. I'll be able to pick that up because it'll float in the water. And then I'm going to strain them through a jelly strainer too, so that the petals actually don't go into the jam, the jelly, But if there happens to be anything else in there, I'm okay, because I will get that out of there. But as you can see, they're just coming along. An interesting thing I found on my last group of flowers that I just did, there was literally a completely white tiny spider. And I thought, what great camouflage to be inside these flowers. So I'm just going to continue. Always make sure you're not putting any leaves or any of the green stems, stalks in with your flowers. And I will just sift through them before I pour the boiling water, which is in my tea kettle, and it's on already, so it's starting to get really hot because it won't take me long to do this. And I want it just boiling hot. And then I will cover it with a cloth, and it will sit at least 8 hours, but I'm going to let it sit overnight. And then in the morning, we'll do the rest of the process of our lilac jelly. And as you can see, they're just beautiful. So I'll be back. So now we have 4 cups of lilac flowers. To the 4 cups, I need to add 5 cups of boiling water. Now be careful when you're pouring the boiling water. And then we're going to just let it steep for at least 8 hours. And I like to do it overnight. So we need 1 more cup. So make sure you're using a heat-proof bowl. Now I'm going to stir this up a little bit, and then I'm going to put a cloth over top of it and just let it steep overnight. Now something I want to show you, little trick. So I have the lilac water steeping. I put a cloth over top of it. But because I don't want, as the heat rises, I don't want any of the essence to leave that bowl, I find a plate that is going to fit onto that glass bowl. And it just keeps all that heat in there longer. And then I just sit it on the counter and just let it sit all night. So it's the next morning, and I have it all strained. And what you want to do is you really want to squeeze it what they call squeezing dry. And that means that you want to get all of the juice out of those lilacs. And of course, the lilacs that are spent, you can just throw in your compost. But this strainer catches, in case I missed any stick or any little bit of green, anything that might have been on the flowers that I missed. And so then I just take this off, and as you can see, lovely color. So then we're going to start the process of making the jelly. Now, if you use Sure-Gel or some of the other ones, you can only do 1 batch at a time. You'll use 1 box, but I use a different kind of pectin, and I'll put that below because it's not a commercial for their kind of pectin. I just happen to like it because I can double or triple or quadruple my batch of jelly, and it will still set. I wanted to show you the beautiful color that as it's dripping through the jelly bag, this beautiful color that's going to be the lilac jelly. Here is everything that we need. We have what I would call our infusion, our tea of lilac. We have sugar, and actually I have 2 bowls of sugar because I am actually doing this 4 times a bigger batch as a regular batch. And so that should make me about 16 half-pint jars. I have my lemon juice, my calcium water, my pectin. my rings and my lids. I can heat up my lids while this syrup is getting ready. Now with this pectin, you use calcium water. And when you buy the pectin, it comes with it. And the calcium actually activates the pectin. And I just really like it because I can make such larger batches than I can otherwise. Because a lot of, if you use Sure Gel and things like that, if you double it, a lot of times you are not getting your jelly to set. And so I'm going to move this over to the stove. The first thing I'm going to do is add my calcium water as it heats up. So I have my burner set on medium high, and I always shake the calcium water. I store it in the refrigerator when I mix it up. And when I am making this 4 times a regular batch, I have to put in 8 calcium waters. And it's a full teaspoon. Now a lot of times when I'm doing new recipes and I'm not quite sure, I add a little bit more calcium. It's just something I do, and sometimes I'll add a little more pectin than I would have otherwise, just because I'm not quite sure any natural pectins they might have or how it's going to turn out. So that's just a rule of thumb that I do. Now that's going to heat up. While that's heating up, I'm going to mix the pectin into my sugar because I don't want any lumps. So I'm over where my bowls of sugar are. You could use, lots of things. You can vary the amount of sugar you want, but this is how I do the lilac. And the recipe will be below. So there's 8 cups of sugar in each of these bowls. And to that, I am going to put 4 tablespoons of my pectin in each one. Now, this is very sticky, which when I first started using it years ago, I was a little surprised. But I store it in a glass jar, and then I just use a whip to mix it in. Because if you don't mix it well with the sugar, you will get lumps, and you don't want lumps. And so it's just a process of mixing it. And I'm going to mix this. I'm going to heat up my lids in some hot water, and then I'll be back. And the lilac tea is on the stove heating up, and we will see you in a few minutes. So my lilac tea was boiling. So I added my first bowl of sugar and I'm stirring. I always like to use a wooden spoon. My canner is already on. I have that on high. It's filled with water. And I put a little bit of white vinegar in there just because I don't want the sediments, minerals that are in your water to collect on the sides of the jars. And then you have to scrub that off, and I just don't want to do that. So I'm incorporating that first bowl of sugar. And as you can see, the color changes somewhat when it starts to do that. And so then we're going to put in our other bowl. Because we want to make a lot of this lilac jelly. I'm going to give it to all my kids, my mom and dad, parental units as I call them. And we're just going to mix this. And with the next batch, this batch of sugar, the color changed again. It got lighter than it was before. Now, could you add a little bit of purple, violet food coloring? Of course you could. But as it starts to cook, the color is going to get dark, a little bit darker again. But I'm just going to keep stirring this. That's one of the reasons I like this spoon with a hole in it, because it mixes so well. And you can just crush any lumps of sugar, but as it heats up and you're stirring, it will fix that too. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue stirring. My lids for my jars are already in very hot water. This is going to come to a boil in my canner, and then I'll come back when we're pouring it in the jars. Now, when it gets to almost the boiling point, I am going to add my lemon juice. So the jelly is really starting to heat up now. It's getting a little bit thicker, and it's time to put the lemon juice in. Now, because I am quadrupling the jelly, I'm making way more than what a single batch would make. I'll have to use a whole cup of lemon juice. Now, I didn't have quite enough lemon juice. So what I did was I had some grapefruits that my parents brought me back from Arizona that were off of a tree down there. No sprays, no nothing. And so I squeezed the grapefruit to finish making that whole cup. And so now I'm just waiting for it to boil. I'm going to let it boil hard for at least a minute, maybe 2 minutes. I'll see how it's doing as it boils. And then we'll be ready to can. Now, my pot is all ready. And so I'm actually going to turn that off until my jelly is ready. It'll stay very hot with the lid on, and I can just turn it on when I start to pour the jelly into the jars, and it will heat up right away. Now, when you're doing this much jelly, you do have to stir it a lot more because you do not want it to stick to the bottom. You don't want to burn it. And so a constant stirring, then you leave it for just a little teeny bit. See how if it's starting to boil, stir again. And I'm just going to continue to do that. So it is beginning to boil. And so this is when I start to really look at my jelly and see if it's starting to get thick. So what I do is I let that start to drip. And as it cools on that spoon, if it gets thicker and thicker, I know it's almost ready. Now, some things that you can, some jellies or jams that you do, it'll get really frothy on here, and you either have to scrape that off, leave it, or what I like to do, if it happens, is when it's almost done, I just put a tablespoon of butter in there and stir it in, and all that froth goes away. Okay, so see how that is just stringing onto my spoon? My jelly is ready. I did add a little bit of food coloring, just so when it goes in the jars, it'll be a delicate light purple. Well, we're ready to put it in the jars. Of course, use a funnel. Makes it so it's not quite as messy. And I like to use 2 different measuring cups. One that goes in, and then I just pour that, set it on the side of my pot, and then I can pour it in. And then I just move to the next one. So I'm going to do that with all my jars. It's a fast, easy process. And then if I need to top off any of my jelly jars before I wipe the rims, that's what I'll do. But it's just turning to be a lovely color. It'll clear up a little bit as it gets canned and it cools. Has a lot of bubbles in there right now, which is totally okay. It's just a process of making jelly. So I'm going to continue that, and I will show you when I put it in the canner. Now my first batch is all ready to go in. As I tighten the jars, I just set them over the steaming pot, and you just want to tighten them finger tight, not really crank it on. You don't have to do that. And most jellies take about 10 minutes to cook, but depends on your elevation. Now we are very high up, almost 5,000 feet. And so I have to add a minute to every 1,000 feet that I'm above sea level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook these for 15 minutes. And so we're just dropping it in. Always be careful, it's boiling water. It's very hot. We put the lid on, and I'm just putting the timer on for 15 minutes. Now while it's cooking, I will do up my other jars so I can put them right into the water. So here's my jelly. It's still very hot. It'll sit on the counter for 24 hours, and then I will be able to label them. I'm hoping that as it cools, it turns a little more purple, because right now it's a little, I don't know what color that would be. Coral almost. But as they sit here, they look a lot darker, but as you put them in the light, it's just that there's no light over there. But I think they are going to be just a delicious jelly. My other ones are about to come out of the canner, and I think the first thing I'm going to do with them is I'm going to make some lemon cookies tomorrow and put droplets of the lilac jelly on top. So this is Sandy at Apple Cottage. I am Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, and if you have some lilacs and you haven't ever done anything besides enjoy them, maybe try making lilac syrup or jelly, or you can actually even candy the flowers, and they look lovely on cakes. As always, like, subscribe, share with the world, and I will see you again.